Look who it is on the Vaqueros hotline. He is our friend Mike Craven, Dave Campbell's Texas Football, the senior writer covering college football at a very high level. Also my co-host on the Eyes on Texas podcast and multicast that is out again this week, a full Red River rivalry recap. You can find that on iTunes, Spotify, and, of course, at the YouTube channel of Dave Campbell's Texas Football. Also on Twitter at Eyes on Texas FB, Eyes on Texas Multicast. Mike Craven with us. Mike, how are you, bud?
What's up, Mike?
Doing good, guys. How are y'all?
Great, brother.
Hey, you were at, before we get to your thoughts on Texas and OU, because I know you have a lot of them, but you were at Texas A&M last week and saw the Aggies lose to Alabama in a game where Aggie fans rightfully frustrated, where their team probably outplayed Alabama, but Jimbo Fisher aggravating, I think, to Aggie fans what they saw last Saturday.
Yeah, I think when you combine what was in front of them, with those decisions, you beat Alabama at home and you're all of a sudden in the driver's seat for the SEC West. You're a top 20 team. There's talk of like college football playoffs and SEC championships and all that kind of stuff after a 5-win season last year. Instead, you punt 3 times in plus territory. You settle for field goals in situations where I think a lot of people wanted you to go for touchdowns. You misuse your timeouts. You kick the onside kick late after kicking a field goal to keep it a touchdown game. And so it felt like one of those ones that got away from A&M. It wasn't one of those games where Alabama was clearly better and A&M had to upset them. I mean, A&M was just as good, if not better, as a football team on Saturday against Alabama. And because their coach kind of played not to lose, they ended up doing just that against Nick Saban.
Yeah, disappointing. And 108,000 though. You were there. That's quite the scene when they pack that place and the press box starts swaying, and that's as good. I mean, between that and what we saw at the Cotton Bowl, that's as good of college football Saturday environments as you can find.
Yeah, I haven't gone around to a lot of the country. I've never been to Death Valley or to Neyland Stadium or anything. But for my money, a home atmosphere, it doesn't get better than Kyle Field. Like, there was 108,100 something people there. It's just absolutely insane what goes on at Kyle Field. I can't wait for Texas A&M to get back playing again so we can see that more.
Totally agree with that, Mike. Hey, Mike, let me ask you just real quick, because I know you keep up with all the teams here in the great state of Texas. The next opponent for the Longhorns is going to be U of H. U of H is going to be in action tonight, facing West Virginia. Tell me about the Cougars, why they're struggling a little bit. Give me your thoughts about U of H.
Yeah, I think they're struggling a little bit for reasons that, you're moving up to the Big 12 where the offensive line, defensive line is going to be better. And they have some good players there. Like Patrick Paul, their left tackle, is one of the best offensive linemen in the whole Big 12, maybe in the whole country. He's going to be a top, first round, second round draft pick. But they don't have a lot of depth after that. They've lost 11 offensive linemen to the portal over the last 2 years. Some of that, on purpose, where they're trying to get rid of some guys. Some of that, because other schools are coming in there and taking them. And so they're going to have to get bigger on the offensive line. They're going to have to get bigger on the defensive line. Think Texas when Steve Sarkisian got here, right? Like, just the idea of not having as many bodies, trying to transform from an American conference roster to a Big 12 conference roster. If you ask the coaches there, they feel pretty good about their first 40 players. It's that next 40 where they're going to have to get better and better and exchange some, old G5 level talent recruits with some new Big 12 talent recruits, and then give them a couple years to develop and become Big 12 caliber players.
You've been around that program, Mike, down at Houston with Dana Holgorsen. Of course, he left West Virginia to take that job and try to take that program to a higher level. What's the level of comfort do you have in that they have in him with Tillman Fertitta, who's kind of one of those guys that wants results and maybe not seeing it? Is how safe is Dana Holgorsen, win or lose tonight?
I honestly think he's pretty safe. You never know with college athletics, but they're investing so much money into other stuff. It's hard to imagining them coming up with the money to buy his buyout. He was given an extension and a raise after that 12-win 2021 season. They had a really good year. And then they kind of fell off a little bit last year, but still won 8 games, which I think was pretty good for Houston. And so they knew that this first year was going to be tough. They didn't know it was going to be this tough. I think really for them, it was losing to Rice. It hasn't been their results in the Big 12 that have raised some eyebrows. It was that loss to Rice. But, they're building a new end zone facility. They're building a new practice facility with like offices and stuff. Tillman Fertitta, is kind of re-energized into their Houston Rockets. And so I think that he's going to be safe, going into 2024. And then that's going to be the real year where we decide this stuff.
Hey, Mike, let me ask you about Texas State. I keep seeing all these great stats about Texas State, and that offense is actually one of the most explosive offenses in the country, and they've had one of the biggest leaps of improvement offensively of any offense in the country. Tell me about the J.G. Kinney offense, personnel-wise, what makes it so unique, schematically, what makes it so prolific?
Yeah, I mean, another guy to mention there is Mac Leftwich, their offensive coordinator. Kenny and him kind of, mad scientists, that thing. They're both under 33 years old. It's kind of just a bunch of young guys getting together and drawing up their favorite offensive plays and going and running them. It's
Nice.
it's kind of like, it reminds me of like, this is going to sound blasphemous, but kind of like Mike Leach early in his career when he had Dana Holgerson, Sonny Dykes, and all those guys in the same office, and they were young. Nobody really knew who they were. They were doing all these weird stuff. I think what's cool about their offense is it's kind of a mismatch of a bunch of different stuff. Like it's got air raid principles. It's got that beer and shoot principle stuff. They do some option things off of it because of Kenny's time with Gus Malzahn. And so they're just really creative in the running game. They're really creative in the passing game. And I think one of the things that they do well, and this is because they're, pretty much all of them are former quarterbacks, they kind of figure out what their quarterback can do, what their quarterback can't do. And then they just kind of throw away all the stuff they can't do. Like, hey, this guy can't run in plays. Like, we're just never going to run them. And so they put their guys in positions to win. They call plays that they know suits the strengths of their team, and they're pretty good at adjusting on that.
Yeah, G.J. Kinney, kind of a rising star at this point after what he did in Incarnate Word and now early on at Texas State. They had a tough loss on Saturday, obviously, where they gave up 2 touchdowns in the last 5 minutes and lost to Louisiana, the Raging Cajuns, but it seemed like they were in control of that game. Mike, before we talk about more around the state, give me your thoughts on Texas and OU. We talked about it a lot on the multicast. One that got away for Texas, their own mistakes, right? What you said all year, and I think we all have. The only team that can beat Texas is Texas, and on Saturday you ran into an inspired and passionate Oklahoma team, and Texas kind of beat themselves.
Yeah, I think it's a double-edged sword for Texas. On one hand, you made all those mistakes, you lost the game, and that's a bummer. But on the other hand, you turned the ball over 3 times. You had a goal line stand get stopped. You had a penalty on a punt that extended an Oklahoma drive. It was basically 5 free drives for Oklahoma in that game, and you were still ahead with 1:11 left in the football game. And so, if you're Texas, you're just trying to get back to that rematch, and you think if you can play a clean game, you're better than Oklahoma. I believe that as well. And so for Texas moving forward, I think it's just, the same thing, right? Like limit the turnovers, play good defense, run the football. Texas is one of the best teams in the nation. I think we all can agree on that at this point. It's just going to come down to execution, motivation, and just discipline, really, the rest of the way out, I think.
No, I agree with you on that too. The Big 12. Let me ask you this really quickly, Mike. The Big 12 is if you take Texas and Oklahoma out of it, of course, because they're looking forward to the move into the SEC. Is this as down as you've seen the Big 12 ever?
Yeah, I can't think of another time. I mean, honestly, whoever wins this Texas Tech Kansas State game this weekend is probably the lone challenger remaining. And just kind of think about that, just with how Tech has played this year and what Kansas State has been. It's definitely a down year. It's a bummer. I'd imagine if you're Brett Yormark and you gave him some truth serum, he wouldn't be too excited about having it this year, right? As the down year he wanted this year to be one where maybe somebody could spoil that party. But it doesn't look like it. Tech is still in a second year on a head coach. They need another year or two to kind of get better in the trenches. Kansas State lost, Deuce Vaughn, which, I think everybody thought they would just be able to replace him, but you just don't replace a playmaker like that. And so it doesn't look like Texas or Oklahoma have any real challengers. And I would bet most of my next mortgage on the fact that those two, have a rematch in Arlington in a month.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Early December. Yeah, K-State, Texas Tech this weekend. Jones Stadium in Lubbock is a big one. Kansas is at Oak State in the Big 12 this week. Also, West Virginia and Houston tonight. That's the Thursday night game. What about TCU, Mike? You've seen them. You've been up close. You wrote the cover story on Sonny Dykes for Dave Campbell's Texas football. They're 3-3. They lost to that West Virginia team we're going to see tonight. They obviously not the same year as last year. We knew they were replacing a lot of players. They're going to play BYU on Saturday afternoon. What's going on in Fort Worth?
Well, they can't score. I think the defense has been on par with what the defense was last year. Not great, but definitely not bad. Winning. You can win in the Big 12 with that kind of defense. But last year with Garrett Riley as the offensive coordinator, with Max Duggan at quarterback, they had Quentin Johnston out wide. They were much better along the offensive line. They lost their guard starters from last year to the NFL. And so, I've heard people joke, like, pick your favorite TCU player from last year, and he's not there anymore, right? And so they were always going to take a little bit of a step back. You weren't going to go 12-0. You probably, were going to be an 8-7 win team because of all those losses that you had and the turnover on the coaching staff. But I think it's been disappointing because they thought Chandler Morris was going to be better than he was. He thought this offense was going to be more explosive, and they just haven't come up with playmakers. They haven't been as consistent running the football. They've had success running the football, but they've been really bad in the red zone. I think they're like 120th in the nation in red zone touchdown percentage. Like, they're worse than Texas in the red zone, scoring touchdowns so far. That's just been a big problem for them. They were able to win all of those one possession coin flip games last year. And then this year they haven't. They lost 2 of those where they didn't lose any of them last year. And so I think it's just thin margins for a team like TCU, and it only takes a player or 2 or a bounce or 2 to go from 12-0 to 8-4. That's just kind of the parity in college football.
Feels like it. And last thing, Baylor, what a mess. I mean, Texas Tech, made it look easy, kind of like Texas did when they went to Waco. Dave Aranda, not in good favor with the Baylor fans, especially with Joey McGuire coming to town and beating them around pretty good. Mac Rhodes, their AD, says he doesn't think the team has quit at all. What's your read on what's happening in Waco with Dave Aranda?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just the result of, not poor recruiting, but not the recruiting they were doing when Matt Rule, Joey McGuire was there. They don't have Terrell Bernard. They don't have Jalen Petrie. They just don't have guys like, they don't have an Abram Smith. And so when they were winning the Big 12 championship in 2021, they weren't scoring a lot of points. They were playing really good defense. They were running the football, and they were winning close games. You flash forward 2 seasons, and Baylor can't run the football. They don't play good defense, and they're not winning close games. That comeback against UCF seems more like an aberration than a proving point, right? Like it wasn't a turning point of their season. And so I'm always concerned when the head coach's side of the ball isn't good. Like if you're Steve Sarkisian, the offensive side of the ball needs to be really good. If you're Brent Venables, the defensive side of the ball needs to be really good, even during down years. Dave Aranda is a defensive guy, and the defense has fallen off of a cliff after 2021. It hasn't gotten any better. They don't have a lot of playmakers, and that's always a bad sign when that's going on with your head coach's side of the ball.
Yep. Yeah, giving them up about 38 points a game in Big 12 games so far this year.
That's crazy.
That ain't good. For sure. Yeah, about 38 a game. Hey, Mike, always appreciate it. Great stuff. I know you're on your tour going to 13 different stadiums over 13 weeks of college football for a coffee table book you're putting together with Dave Campbell's Texas Football. Where are you going this weekend?
I'm going to Texas State. Going to see Texas State versus Louisiana Monroe. A fun fact about this tour, I've now been to 6 different stadiums on this tour. The home team has lost every single time.
That's good.
Yeah,
you're the kiss of death, Mike. You're the kiss of death for the home team.
Yes. They may not let me keep coming to these games. But Texas State is a 17-point favorite, so we're going to really test that theory this weekend.
All right, buddy. All right, Dave, Mike Craven, check out the Eyes on Texas multicast. Also, all of his stuff at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, the Republic of Football Texas Network, man, covering all the teams, 13 of them now in the great state, including Sam Houston as they've joined the fun. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate it, my
Thanks,
friend.
Mike.
Later, guys.
All right, there's Mike Craven. At Craven Mike
stuff
on Twitter. He does. It's always good to get he's covering these coaches and talking to these coaches and teams daily. We microscope Texas, but keep an eye on what goes on. Mike has got the deep dive around the state of Texas.